Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Soccer for Good. I am your host, Rodney Wallace, and I'm here with great people around me that are in the space of making change. And this is an exciting panel because, yes, we've talked about numbers and we've talked about, business here and there, but this is more than that. I think that this is really the important stuff, and that's the the part about giving back, using the game of soccer to build communities, to make change, and that's why we're here. So, a little bit about myself. My name is Rodney Wallace. Played professionally for 11 years. This isn't really about that. Right now, I'm here joined by fantastic people: Carl Martino, John Rowe. We have the big man over here. Big tackles, by the way, Jason
Thank you,
Roberts,
my friend.
okay?
Thank you.
And then, this is a big opportunity for us to really discuss what we are willing to do for social change. So without further ado, Nasser Achari, can you please introduce yourself to the people and,
Sure.
and get us going?
Thank you. So first of all, it's a pleasure to be here, obviously with partners and friends, Jason, John, Kyle as well. We've been talking for a while now, so finally we meet in person. So my name is Nasser Al-Khouri. I'm the Executive Director of Generation Amazing Foundation. Generation Amazing Foundation, for those who don't know, is the Human and Social Legacy Project of the FIFA World Cup Qatar 2022. And basically we use football, now sports, to transform people's lives. And mainly working with youth in disadvantaged communities, whether they're refugees, internally displaced people, marginalized communities across the world. So we started obviously in the Middle East because it's the first World Cup. As a legacy to the Middle East, we wanted to give back, and then we've expanded to the Global South since then. We've been doing a lot of great work with CONCACAF and with Jason, delivering projects in the 41 member associations under CONCACAF as well. So that's kind of Generation Amazing in a nutshell.
Generation Amazing is doing wonderful work, and congratulations. You have now reached the milestone of, I would say, servicing over a million people worldwide. So congratulations for that. That's a very, very big accomplishment.
Thank you.
What have been some of the struggles within the project, some of the roadblocks that you've been facing? A lot of the work that we're doing within service, it's great, but it's also new to some people, and it's also sometimes not for everybody. So along the way, you find roadblocks, and there has to be a call to action. So what have you found that has been something that's worked for you?
Yeah, I mean, some of the challenges, obviously, from the development sector, obviously funding is the biggest challenge. I think John would agree with that as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, looking for partners and looking for people that are invested in the cause and that can support and provide, funding for, the sustainability of the foundation is important. Obviously, we've been funded over the last 13 years by the organizing committee of the World Cup, but now, that committee is winding down, and so we're looking at, diversifying our sources of income. So I would say that's a challenge. And then obviously, like the development sector as a whole, the sports for development sector is a new sort of sector that's emerging, and there's a lot of amazing work that's happening in the sports for development sector that I think people now are realizing and sort of wanting to support, whether it's individual players, whether it's organizations like Common Goal that use the power of sports and athletes to kind of bring about positive social change. So we see, over the last couple of years, there's a growth in terms of, in this sector, which I think will provide a lot of opportunities. It was a challenge, but now I think it will provide a lot of opportunities down the line as well.
Rodney, I just wanted to come on this point because I think it's really important I think all of the organizations here would agree, Kyle and John, etc., and your work in the community as well, is that funding and building partnerships is one of the most difficult things to do, because nothing can be done without the funding, nothing can be done without those partnerships, whether it's between non-governmental organizations, foundations, government, whatever it may be. And I think our role at CONCACAF is to utilize our member associations and the relationships that we have to make sure that we build that environment of sports for social change. If we cast our mind back many years ago, it wasn't a given that in Europe and in other places, sports for social change wasn't a thing.
Right.
There was grassroots sports, and then there was elite sports. And I think we're now in the world where we're talking about, yes, there's access to the sport, but how can you ensure that it's to the benefit of the game? How can you make sure it's to the benefit to the local people and to the community, to the cohesion of the country? So I think that the work that we've been doing between Generation Amazing and CONCACAF has really been about upskilling young people. We've had over 6,000 people be a part of our project, but most importantly, over 300 coaches and volunteers have been part of that volunteer network. And I think that shows the power of partnership. And we're here, we have our friend Rob Skinner from the United Nations Football for the Goals here. And I think their focus on using the partnerships between footballing organisations and sporting organisations to impact that social change agenda is really important and something that's hopefully going to help everybody in this sector.
I love that. And none of this is really done without that passion, and I feel that from you. And I've been learning a lot from you, from the Jason Roberts Foundation as well. But you being the Director of Development for CONCACAF, what have you seen be the main driving force for change within the people you train, the coaching staffs in the Caribbean, in Central America, North America?
Rodney, that's a great question. And you mentioned that point about advocacy or making a call for change. The reality is in our region, we have over 10 countries in the top 10 for youth unemployment. We have over 35% of people within the Caribbean who are living below the poverty line. So these are issues where, as a CONCACAF perspective, we're here to develop, promote, manage football. You know, we're here to help our member associations develop and get to the World Cup or get to our Gold Cup and different competitions. But if we can do that in a manner which upskills people and allows opportunities for education and employment and reaches into communities, hard to reach communities, make sure we address gender equality through the work that we do, then I think we're more than just a footballing organisation. I think that's what we have here, a collection of organisations that, whilst recognising that sport is the language, making sure that the outcome can be far bigger than just the sport.
Love that. Speaking of, yeah, what? We're done. Speaking of competition and building community, John, Street Child United, please tell us a little bit about that.
I volunteered in 2008 in South Africa at a street child organisation run by former street children. I met a boy called Andile who said, when people see me on the streets, they say I'm a street child. But when they see me playing soccer, they say I am a person. I'm a person like you. That gave us the idea of the power of this game that we all love, that can change the way the world sees children like Andile. And if we can change the way that the world sees street children, we can begin to change the way that the world treats street children. The key demand of the children that we serve is identity, access to education, protection from violence, and gender equality. So we piggyback the FIFA World Cup and the ICC Cricket World Cup to run a World Cup for street children. It is what it says on the tin. Our daughters came back from South Africa, and at a school assembly, a young girl put her hand up and said, first World Cup in Africa is happening in 2010. Why can't street children have a World Cup? India beat Tanzania in the final of that first Street Child World Cup, March 21st, South African Human Rights Day 2010 in Durban. Tanzania were still really cross about this disputed penalty. But what we hadn't realised was what heroes they would be when they go back. So when the youngsters from Tanzania got back to Dar es Salaam, they were taken to Dodoma, to the Nationalist Parliament, which was temporarily suspended to welcome them home, 650 MPs. We did the event again in Brazil and in Russia and in Qatar, and we're delighted that we'll be doing it in North America in 2026. When our youngsters from Pakistan arrived back in Karachi during Ramadan, 4 a.m. in the morning, there were 7,000 people to meet them at the airport. They met their president. They met their prime minister. The Pakistan government did the first ever census of street children as a result of that. And they provided funding for police officers and street child organizations to work together to provide child protection training. When they go back to India, our team from India met Monica Sanjeev Gandhi, who promised to provide Aadhaar cards, identity cards, for 6 million street children. I hadn't anticipated any of that impact when we first heard that girl put her hand up and say, why can't street children in the World Cup? And it's amazing to be here at Soccerex, having had a fabulous event in Qatar, thinking about what the legacy of the 2026 World Cup is going to be for the children we serve. We want to have 101 young leaders from all our projects. We want to have 1,001 children into higher education, and we want to use the 2026 World Cup to deliver 1,000,001 birth certificates for street children. My job is to create a global platform for my children's voices to be heard. Today I have to say something about our team from Palestine. They're in the Ramallah refugee camp. They're girls that came to Qatar. It was the first time they'd left Palestine. They've faced so many barriers to take part in the game that we all love. They're terrified when they go to bed. They said they write their names and their ages and their birth dates on their arms and their bodies in case they don't make it through to the morning. NASA is working to provide safe spaces for children all over the world, but including in Palestine. Please keep those children safe. Do all that we can as a community of people in football to call for a ceasefire. Thank you.
And John, you touched on a lot of fantastic things. One of the things that stuck out to me was identity, right? The importance of self-worth, right? You're known as somebody through the game of soccer. I can relate to that. Coming to the States, not speaking English, the only way that I could speak was with the soccer ball. So I can understand that. And something that you have in common with Kyle is using the streets for understanding, for education, for the fun of it, for understanding the game, and for acceptance. So, Kyle, can you tell us a little bit more about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, and thank you for that, and all of you on the stage. I think what combines all of us is kind of the same thing that combines everyone in the room. Yeah, we love this game deeply, and I think the thing that combines us, I think, at a more granular level is trying to remove the friction between those that need the game most and those struggling to find it. And so, you know, I'm here because football saved my life. You know, as someone that lives with depression, without football, I would not have the character, I would not have the skill set, I would not have the network to live a healthy, happy, and successful life. And the idea that we put so much friction between others that could enjoy that gift is something at a molecular level I work every day trying to figure out how to solve. The idea that it's a privilege rather than the right of every kid to enjoy the power of the greatest health and wellness instrument on the planet is something I spend all day thinking about. And I mean, I'm here specifically because of two really bad losses. The U.S. men failing to qualify for the World Cup. I was furious like everyone else, and when I heard all of the comments afterwards, I realized we're missing the point. This is not a top of the pyramid issue. This is a fundamental, foundational issue where we've somehow taken a game that is played right here and put it way over there so that people aren't accessing it as easily as they could. And the other loss was running for U.S. Soccer president. Quit a dream job with NBC to battle for an unpaid position within U.S. Soccer, and I lost that election, and out of it, I think that was the best loss of my life. The issue of consequence I just couldn't shake from my head was this idea of access that we're talking about. Like, how have we screwed up the #1 sport on the planet, for the very reason that it's so easy to access, that it's the birthright of everyone? How have we managed to make it such an exclusive and such an elite and such a rich game in this country? And, you know, there's one quote that when I was studying with the Aspen Institute of Sports came out, and I just thought, this is it. Proximity to a facility is the highest percentage chance a kid will start and continue playing soccer. And so I just thought for a second, well, you know, I've traveled all over the world, and every country I've ever been in, every piece of concrete used for sport, a basketball hoop is over a soccer goal. And I just started with this baseline premise of, well, I actually don't think we have a facility problem. I think we have a paradigm problem of how we think of soccer and how we engage with it. It's the #1 sport in the world because the majority of people start playing it on hardscape, and spend the majority of their life playing it on hardscape. You know, Cruyff said, I trained 3 hours a week at Ajax. I played 3 hours a day in the street. Where do you think I learned to play football? And so here's where my competitive brain and my heart meet. And at this inflection point with the market in this country, and this room is demonstrative of it, this is the, I can't swear, I was going to swear, this is the cool part about the problem. Yield and social enterprise are now meeting at the same place. So you can have World Cups that generate enormous amounts of money, and there's people that now will say, remember what we promised this World Cup will do. And now we have a chance with 2026 coming on the horizon to not wait for a World Cup to do a lot of these things. And so for me, the one answer was always concrete. If we create a concrete culture, we will solve a developmental problem, a problem that we all knew was going to happen to the women's side because Title IX made them a world powerhouse, not the architecture and the investment in making our women's team a global power. So we have this moment where, yes, we want to keep winning at the top, and winning at the top generates value and generates interest. But when you have a broken system of intrigue leads to non-access, you have an alienated and apathetic culture of kids and adults. Kids tend to become adults that have kids, and we create this really difficult cycle to break out of, which is the #1 sport on the planet doesn't feel like it belongs to the kids that need it most. And so I dedicated the last 7 years of my life and basically all my savings to trying to figure out how to solve this problem. And along the way, ran into amazing people like Lawrence Gann. I'm going to embarrass him back there with Street Soccer USA. Teresa Tran, who's a friend of mine who encouraged me and connected me with amazing people. Charlie Stolitano, who I was sitting with, you know, people that have enjoyed the gift of this game, that have access to people that can either fund or open the aperture for what we're doing. I just had enough courage to say, I will make the 2,000 basketball courts in New York City that we're not using for its primary purpose not another sport. I'll find a way to make that soccer. And I spent 3 years designing and patenting a goal system that I made at 5 a.m. in my kitchen. It's another reason that I'm probably divorced, as my wife came down, like, what is wrong with you? What have you been doing down here all night? And I got laughed out of every single Parks and Rec room. I got laughed out of almost every single funding room, even the ones that are supposed to fund in growing the game in this country. And I was able to patent the system that now is in 17 cities. And after 4 years, we did a court with New York City Parks and Rec, which I love them now, probably the most difficult group to work with, but one of the most progressive in how they're trying to use, as the biggest gatekeepers to sport, their facilities to solve the problems we're trying to solve. So, you know, I'm demonstrative of, you know, a $150,000 a year budget, not a $20, $30, $50 million a year budget. And one person that's just obdurate at a level of annoying, who knows the gift of soccer and what it can do to change lives. And Patrice Evra, who was one of my heroes, who grew up in an area north of Paris. If you've never seen Concrete Football, go watch that documentary, has come on as a co-founder. And here's someone that didn't play organized soccer until he was 13, who's won World Cups and Champions League trophies, speaks 6 languages, and now is advocating for getting violence out of sport and speaking at the UN, and spoke about his experience being violated as a child. And this is the network effect of football. And too often we screw it up where we have the answers, we have the solutions. We're just missing the moon for the finger pointing at it, thinking that you change this game by investing millions of dollars up at the top. And it's just going to perpetuate a problem that, you know, people are working really hard to solve. They just need you to tell their stories, you to plug in your partnerships, and you to help fund the mission.
One thing that you did touch on, you touched on everything.
Yeah, I always go very long.
You're done, by the way. You spoke about the women's game and continuing that wave of dominance and allowing them to grow and be great. So, Jason, what is CONCACAF doing to support the women's game?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. It's a great question because on the face of it, I could point to 6 teams getting to the recent Women's World Cup and say, aren't we great? What a great success. And I could point to all of the success of the US women's team and the Canadian women's team, and I could say, aren't we doing a fantastic job? But I think the reality is that we have the capacity to do more. And if we look at what we've done with our competitions, investing in our road to the Women's World Cup, our W Championship, our Women's Gold Cup, as well as becoming the only confederation in the world of a U15 tournament, a centralized tournament for all of our member associations to send their best under 15s, we've made a big commitment in competitions to make sure that we're addressing some of the issues which we have across all 41 of our different countries. Because the reality is I could point to so many metrics that shows how many women are playing football in the CONCACAF region. But a lot of it is focused on particular areas. Our aim is to make sure that more girls are playing the sport, more women, young girls are playing the sport across the whole of the CONCACAF region. So one of the roles that we can do is make sure there's access to coaching education for women. And through our W program, we have ensured that over 300 women have had access to coaching education. As well as that, through our women's focus on not only our Next Play program, but our program with Generation Amazing. Over 2,000 girls have been part of that program. With our work with our bigger game, the focus is not only on access to the pitch, because that's the main focus, which is the benefit that can be derived from actually playing our sport, but also how can we level the playing field and make sure through inclusion and diversity, women, as well as everybody else, can have a fair shot at enjoying our sport, and then making it sustainable. So these are really the pillars of our bigger game focus, and that's been really supplemented by the work we've done with our friends from Generation Amazing. They've challenged us to not only invest in women's football and invest in football within our region, but also to make sure that we leave a legacy behind. We spoke about legacy, we spoke about social entrepreneurship. That's going to come when people get the opportunity to educate themselves and to have opportunities for employment. And through our joint curriculum, which has not only reached out into schools, reached out to volunteer networks and coaches, our education is not just about the X's and O's. It's about how can we ensure that football is delivered in a way where we promote the best values of our sport. It's also about ensuring that our volunteer network and our coaches and our teachers understand very obvious safeguarding measures, because the reality is in many of our member associations, these are areas where we can make a big impact through our contact with the sport. And I just want to commend Generation Amazing for continuing to push us to work with our member associations to make sure that, yes, football is the focus, but the residual impact is far, far more beneficial than that.
Let me just say one thing real quick. Invest in women's football. Again, like, here's this cool intersection. It's proven now. Invest in women's football, it makes a lot more money. There's a compounding effect. This is one of the things we've missed the most is, you want to make money? Women's football is an amazing way to make money. Oh, and by the way, childhood obesity is 4 times with Latina women what it is for men. So here's a wild world in which you're going to save lives by making money. And listen, I've gotten beaten down just like everyone else has, raising money every year for nonprofits. It is a endless, you have to be indefatigable. It's a very difficult world to live in, but it's cool now is you can create instruments for profit. And brands are now advertising and marketing in different ways and showing up for consumers. So invest in women's football, and then all of these other things are true, and they have an enormous compounding impact. And that flywheel is where the sustainability comes from.
John, talk to us about Street Child United, but I want to know what we're doing moving forward into the World Cup. We have major tournaments, we have the Women's Gold Cup, but we also have the World Cup coming up. What are the resources that you're looking to use in order to get this identification process going, especially for the women?
Yeah, so identity is key. The majority of street children, 75% of them, don't have birth certificates. They don't officially exist. They're off the radar. And if you don't exist, no one's going to protect you. If you don't exist, you can't engage in education. You can only work in the informal economy. You can't actually get married. You can't actually have a burial. So identity is absolutely key. We call it the I'm Somebody World Cup. We're working, when I talk about 1,000,001 birth certificates, we have teams in Guatemala, in Bolivia, and we're working with midwives there to be trained as registrars. So when they deliver babies, they also register them. And that baby then has a health record on an app that goes forward with it. And that's something being delivered through football. So identity is absolutely key for children going forward.
Thank you.
Well, just one question. Outside of funds, right? Like obviously that's the fuel that helps things going. What are a few of the things between now and 2026, if you could point to force multipliers that would really help?
So we had a film made about our World Cup in Qatar featuring David Beckham. I was here last week at the Fort Lauderdale Film Festival to watch it. It was in the Rio Film Festival the week before. This last weekend it won Best Film at the Milan Film Festival. It's called I Am Somebody. It follows Team Palestine girls, Team Brazil girls, Team Pakistan boys before, during and after. It's made by Charmaine Obaid Chinoy, double Oscar winner, made the last Marvel film, made the next Star Wars film. The executive producer is Stephen Daldry, who did The Crown and Billy Elliot. It's a fantastic advert for the power of the Street Child World Cup. If you can help me promote that film, I want to have 21 screenings of it in the US in the next 12 months. If you've got links with streaming companies, please come and talk to me and my colleague Gianni and Hannah and Scott. That would be a really great way in. We've got 3 years, so we don't have to move into this. In terms of where we want it, there's a lot of reason to do it here in Miami, but I'm looking for an organization or a city that's really hungry to host this Street Child World Cup. It'll be 28 teams, 14 girls teams, 14 boys teams from all over the world. It's a really big ask, but it happens because the whole world conspires with us to make it happen. And it's an invitation, and it's a gift. And I suppose when I was thinking about this panel, I was thinking, I have a responsibility to give everybody in football the opportunity to be glad, to take part, to cherish this opportunity, to engage with it, to make a difference for all these young people. And I know I've had such a fabulous reception here. And I've lived in America for a couple of years. I know how generous your country is. Thank you. I'm thanking you now because I know you're going to do it. Thank you for being on the side of Street Connected children across the world.
Thank you, John. And I believe that we're all on this stage and we're all listening and we can talk about what great work we're doing, but Generation Amazing has reached over 1 million families. But imagine the work that we could do if all of us in this room were able to contribute to the social side of the game. We got to look at ourselves, what can we personally do from our individual businesses, our individual desires? Yes, we want to get ahead in the game. We want to make money. The women's game is growing. But what are we really doing for the next generations, right? And there's so many different avenues of that. And I think that Generation Amazing has touched on even the arts, right? So tell us about the importance of the arts within the game of soccer.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think overall, I can't stress enough how important it is to work in partnership with other organizations like CONCACAF, like Street Child World Cup, and Street Child United. I mean, everything we do, even the UN itself, we are obviously partners with the UN scoring for the goals. Thank you, Rob. But I think, again, we really believe that, you can't individually do everything, and you need to rely on partners, and everything we do is with local CBOs or NGOs from that country, from that community that know exactly the needs and the issues of that community that help us design the curricula and design the programs and the interventions based on those needs. A lot of times, unfortunately, the development sector shows up in a developing country and prescribes a program on that community and takes a couple of photos and leaves. You can sometimes do more harm than good in that kind of mindset. So we don't work that way. We work with the community, for the community. And again, I think, we've had over, maybe 100 strategic partners that we've been working with over the last 13 years that really allowed us to be in 75 countries globally and, allowed us to build, 41 safe spaces in over 35 countries. Everything we do from youth festivals to community clubs to the coach education. Again, I can't stress enough the importance of partnerships, and SDG 17 is very important because it's all about partnerships. And again, I think the other thing that I want to mention as well is that sports is an amazing, we look at sports as a tool to expedite UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we really feel that sports is an enabler to the UN SDGs. And I think not just football, all other sports. And we've recently, started doing stuff with basketball, volleyball, and some of the other sports as well. We're exploring cricket in India. There's a lot of work that could be done, not just, limiting yourself to football, but, there's other sports as well, or I should say soccer.
Whoa.
Yeah. But also, going back to your question, culture is also, again, arts, everything else that we do, the storytelling piece around, the World Cup. We partnered with Goal Click, which is an organization that focuses on storytelling through pictures. And we did an amazing program for youth and workers that lived in Qatar and were part of the living up and part of the experience of the World Cup. And they did amazing work in terms of, showcasing and doing a photo exhibit during the World Cup of the journey, of whether it was a worker, whether it was a youth advocate, or a football coach. So I think, the arts as well is intertwined with sports most of the time. And I think, again, I think if you think creatively outside the box, there's a lot that you could do with arts and sports as well. Our youth festivals every year that we organize alongside mega sporting events. We always do art workshops. We do a lot of work around, music, art, culture. Because again, sports is culture, and everything we do, it's showcasing different cultures. One of the reasons why we wanted to host the World Cup in Qatar is to showcase our culture to the rest of the world. And I think, that's, again, whenever we do youth festivals, it's youth coming together from all different parts of the world. Similar to the Street Child World Cup, you have different teams coming from different parts of the world. And you guys also do a cultural ceremony, which is amazing. And it's amazing to showcase this culture and this, firsthand, experience to other youth, because a lot of times, there's so much stereotyping out there, and there's so much sort of, there's a narrative that you hear about certain people, but that's not always the truth.
Wonderful. Well, we've run out of time, but for me personally, it's been an honor to share the stage with all of you, and to have you guys in attendance to listen in and to learn about the wonderful work that all of you are doing. And again, I encourage all of us to use this World Cup that's coming to the States as a beginning and not an end. This is an opportunity for us to now open the doors, leave them open, and continue to feed all of the knowledge that we have and that we gain into the youth, into the communities for social change. So, thank you all.
Thanks, Randy.